So in this video, we're going to be going behind the mix and breaking down Christmas O'Clock. That's the title of the song. It came out sometime in December. You can go ahead and stream it now. The link is in the description. We're going to be diving into the details of the mix, how I, produced the song, how I mixed the music, the challenges I faced, how I overcame those challenges. And we're just going to be, diving into the nooks and crannies of the mix entirely. So without further ado, let's jump right in. All right, guys, so let's listen to how the song starts out.
So much love on every side.
Bright light in the sky. So much love on every side. Merry Christmas, y'all.
Alphabet.
So first of all, we have this, and this was like the foundation of the whole production. This is without the effects. With all the effects turned on. And as you can see, we have a sound godizer here, a parametric EQ, a fruity limiter for compression, okay, saturation, very, very extremely little saturation, and then lastly, another EQ to tame down these frequencies right here. So simply, that is that for this. And this alone sets the mood that everything else builds on top of. All right, so next up we have this. Same thing, similar effect, sound godizer, EQ, and then a distortion, bloody overdrive. And then next up, this comes in. You start to get that Christmas vibe from this already. As you can see, this was panned a little to the left, okay? And this was panned a little to the right. Next up, this came in. Okay, and this just gave it some kind of like an atmosphere feeling, okay? So it's something that you cannot really perceive, but it gives in so much impact. Just have this airy feeling, all right? And then this is it without the effects. All right, so we took out a whole lot of those mid frequencies and then left the extremely high frequencies. And then as usual, we have a sound godizer. We have a parametric EQ again, fruity blood overdrive, saturation, and then a panomatic for, the automatic panning left and right. And as you can see, the stereo separation is at 100%. We made it extremely stereo to, make it fit in those extreme left and extreme rights. Then next up, we have the drums. One thing you should notice here is that there is a drum bus, okay? And if we are to hide all the effects from the drum bus, this is how it sounds. But with the effects turned on, so it gives it a whole lot of punch and, makes it better. There's no English you want to explain. It just makes it sound better, makes them more cohesive. So if you don't know how to use bus channels, there's a link in the description to a detailed video on talking about bus channels, okay? All right, so we have the kick right here. Okay. Here's the first snare. We have another snare coming in. So this one more has as you can see, there's a reverb here, more of a reverb tail to it. Then we have this percussion coming in. Then next we have, I think this is a hi-hat. Yes, an open hi-hat. Okay. Then we have a hi-hat loop coming in. Then another hi-hat. Then this. Then coming in next we have this shaker. And then lastly, we have the same tambourine coming in. And that is what's made up the drums in the first section. All right, and then if it's to go further down, we have the vocals.
Bright light So much love on every side. Yeah.
The first thing when it comes to singing vocals, most of the time, what I do is that I actually manually tune the vocals. Okay, where I just correct the pitches and make it sound good. You use Newton to do that or Melodyne. Autotune can also do that too. There's also a detailed video on how to pitch correct vocals in the descriptions below if you want more details on how to pitch correct vocals. But after you do that, then you can now use your autotune effect, which I'm using pitcher right here. And you can see it's set to medium, okay, to just fine tune the whole thing. When you use autotune only without the manual correction, there are some errors that it might cause, okay, which can, change how it sounds. All right, and then next up we have compressor. All right,
Bright light in the sky.
then we have then we have an EQ to take out the low end frequencies. Very, very important. We do not need these frequencies, most especially when we are working with vocals. And then we have our sound godizer as usual. Very, very wonderful plugin. And then we also have saturation knob. Also very important when working with vocals. Every time I work with vocals, I always use any form of saturation. All right. Then also we have another EQ. This one is to tone down most of those harsh frequencies. And then next up we have another EQ and another EQ. And then also we have this right here. Bright light in the sky, so much love on every side. Merry Christmas, y'all. All right, so it's a similar effect. All of them always have similar processes when working with vocals technically, but this is a rap vocal, so the auto-tune was not necessary. So immediately we jump straight to moving the low end frequencies. It's just like almost like a rule to always remove the low end frequencies because they kind of just mess around and you don't really want the low end to be jam packed with too many clashing frequencies. It's a very, very delicate area. Okay, we have our compression. All right here. Sound godizer, very, very important. EQ, also very important. And another tip when working with vocals is always to this range of frequencies, okay, they always tend to have a whole lot of boominess to the vocal. So most of the time it's always vital to turn down this area of frequencies. Okay, find out what is booming there and turn it down. And then next up we have saturation knob as usual. We've gone over that already. Okay, and over here we have another EQ, taking down some of those harsh and frequencies once again. Okay, as you can see right here, we have all this. All right, and then lastly, we have two different EQs. Okay, as you can see, we have this right here. Also took down again some of those low ends. And lastly, we have this, which, just emphasizing the lows and the highs, taking down some of the lows and boosting some of those high end frequencies. So without all these effects, this is how it sounds. Bright light in the sky. So when we turn on the effects, bright light in the sky, so much love on every side. Merry Christmas, y'all. All right. And that is that for that section. And the next major section right next to that, we have the verse 1. Okay, and this comes in like this.
Matter. Waiting January, don't beat it now. If you can just count the blessings, all the failures no go count. Be shaking Santa for decades, and I never saw Santa Claus. Could anyone tell me here if they ever saw Santa frown? Doesn't matter how you do it. If you like, you can type it. Put a little smile. That's why they call it smiling. If smiling isn't seen, does it mean frowning is a sin? So you should never be seen in it. People, do you see?
All right, so the first one is technically the same thing. The only new elements that were added here are, first of all, we have this right here. And if we look at this, first of all, we have a sound godizer. Just know that in almost, if not 90% of all my inserts in the mix, I always use a sound godizer. It's like my go-to, first of all, plugin. It always just makes things sound better. And next to that, we have a Valhalla Supermassive. Right, so if you have to turn this effect off, let's just go ahead and turn it off and let's see the difference in how, in how it sounds. Okay, so that's how it sounds with all the effects turned off. If we turn them on, See, it makes it fit the vibe way better. So after the supermassive, we have a fruity reverb. Then we have an EQ to boost up those high frequencies, and lastly we have a distortion with fruity blood overdrive, and that sums that up for that. Okay, and then also what came in right here, we have this. First of all, we have a compressor, sound gather as usual, EQ, distortion, Valhalla Supermassive also. And then lastly, we have another compressor, and then we have a saturation. And then lastly, for this session, we have the 808 coming in right here. All right, and then as usual, if we're working with 808s, we have to, either sidechain or use a dynamic EQ on the kick and the bass to make them, blend well. These are kick right here and these are 808 right here. Okay, so as you can see, there is a side chain that's working on the 808, Okay, so that is that for that. So aside the side chain compression, we also have a sound equalizer, a distortion, and then we also have another distortion right here. And then we also have a parametric EQ to take out some of those high-end frequencies, saturation, and then another parametric EQ coming up right here to, take out way more of the low and the high-end frequencies. And then lastly, to sum everything up, we have the vocals.
No matter. Waiting January, don't beat it now. If you can just count the blessings or the failures, no
And
go count.
working with vocals, there's just a kind of a category of plugins that I use when working with vocals. All right. So as you can see, we have our EQ first of all, we have our compression, we have our sound equalizer, technically still a compressor in a way. All right. We have EQ once again. Saturation, very important. We have another EQ here to tame out the high-end frequencies, tame out the harsh frequencies, sorry. Then we have another EQ, and then we have a DSR. All right. And then lastly, we have another EQ to, to boost this mid-range over here. And that's technically those all that went into the vocal. So if I'm to mute all these effects, these are sounds.
No matter. Waiting January, don't beat it now. If you can just count the blessings or the failures, no go count. Be shaking Santa for decades, and I never saw Santa Claus.
All right. So that is it before the effects, and then this is it with the effects turned on.
No matter. Waiting January, don't beat it now.
Technically, that sums that section up. Okay, so if you want to dive deeper into this, mixing process, you're tired of hearing so much theory, you want, more hands-on practical experience. All right, I'm gonna be starting a mixing academy very soon. It's gonna be online, where I take a couple of students and I guide them focus more on your practical skills. The whole program is gonna last for 8 weeks, so we're gonna dive into a whole lot of details as it goes. So if you're a home producer, you produce your own music, you mix your own music, and you're having a hard time, trying to get that mix to actually sit right, you're having a hard time trying to get the vocals to sit right, this is something you actually struggle with. All right, this program is exactly for you. So there's a link in the description to join the waiting list so that you receive updates, information on how the process is going, and most importantly, when it's starting, so you can, jump right in as soon as possible. So now we're going to move over to the last chorus, okay? Just to get the whole full vibe of how everything turned out to be. And this is how it sounds.
Yeah, my brother, my sister, my people, how we go be? How we go be? Sing it again. Yeah.
Bright light in the sky, so much love I'll never see. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Everybody raise your hands, this is Christmas season. Bright light in the sky,
Obviously, there were some new sounds and new elements that were added to this section. And you can see the most pronounced one is this lead right here. Okay, so without the effects turned on this, we have this. with the effects turned on. All right, so as you can see, there are a whole lot of effects on this. It went through a whole lot of processes, but it's still the same categories of plugins. All right, so that is one of the new elements that were added. And the next up, we have this. All right, so this was the bass. And then one major challenge I had when mixing this section was how to mix the bass, the 808, and the kick together to make it sound good. Okay, so this is the 808 right here. And then we also have the kick coming in. And I really had to, dig my way in. The way I handled this technically is I actually splitted it. As you can see, this is exactly where the bass leads to, first of all, but it is not routing to the master. It's actually routing into two different sections right here. And the first section has to deal with, while this other section now contains all the high end frequencies above that. So on the low end frequency, compressed that, and we have to mute the low end. This is just what we have for the high end frequencies, which is not just, it's not really given. Okay, I needed those low end frequencies. So that was the major reason that I had to really try to work out on how to actually keep those low end frequencies. And that was what I settled for. So I compressed those low end frequencies, and then that was that for that. All right, and then next up we have this. And this was technically just to, add to the whole texture to, fill up those empty frequencies and make it sound larger. The only effect we have here is just the sound riser. So lastly, before we dive into the vocals, we have this right here. So we have a reverb, parametric EQ, sound riser, just playing around with all those. All right, so next up is we have the vocals. All right, and this was the first, the main vocals right here.
Bright light in the sky, so much love on every side. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Everybody raise your hands, this is Christmas.
The whole process of working with the vocals is technically still the same thing. Okay. First of all, you manually tune the vocals when it comes to singing. Okay. Then you use auto-tune. As you can see, we have our picture up front. And just the same categories of plugins trying to, play around with all the effects, for them to fit in. As you can see, we have all this going on right here. Okay, and most importantly, when working with vocals, I always try to use a vocal bus because, like I said, bus channels just always tend to make things sound better when you're grouping different vocals together and trying to play them at once. Most especially in this chorus, most especially in the chorus section where we have a whole couple of different sounds.